Let's talk mediation. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the conversation series on mediation, created with an aim and vision to promote awareness of mediation in the world around us and to talk about mediation from the perspective of a common person. We will be unmasking and venturing into the life and persona of a mediator in this season too. We continue with a short legal disclaimer. The views expressed herein are the voluntary personal perspectives of the speaker and may or may not represent the views of the larger professional community they belong to. This conversation series aims to provide a general overview and awareness of the subject matter involved and may not be construed as a legal or professional advice in any manner whatsoever. This session is being recorded for wide circulation. Let me introduce the guest speaker for today's session, Dr. Phil Gittins, the Education Director at World Beyond Force Education. Dr. Phil has, to his credit, over 20 years of leadership programming and analysis experience in the areas of peace, education, psychology, youth, and community development. He has lived, worked, and traveled in over 60 countries across 6 continents, taught in schools, colleges, and universities around the world, and trained thousands on peace and social change related issues. Other experiences include work in the youth offending prisons, developing and launching and overseeing a wide range of large and small scale programs and projects. Dr. Phil has received multiple awards for his work, among many, including a Rotary Peace Fellowship. He is also a positive peace activator and Global Peace Index ambassador for the Institute of Economics and Peace. With a PhD in international conflict analysis, education in youth community studies and peace and conflict studies, he is also a qualified counselor and psychotherapist, as well as a certified neuro linguistic programming practitioner and project manager. Dr. Phil also sits on the board for the Journal of Peace Education. So that was I shortened it a bit so that I could handle it, but that was a very wide experience. So welcome on board, Dr. Gittins. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
That's a pleasure. So a lot of, as I was reading, a lot of peace-related work, Dr. Gittins. So what prompted you to venture into this section or this sector?
Mm. Okay, well, there's a long answer and there's a short answer, but I'll do the short answer now in terms of thinking of the time that we have together. It's an extension of the work that I was doing anyway. So I've been involved with peace building work, I would say, called building work the last maybe 15 years. But before that, I was involved with peace building work, but not calling it peace building work, as an educator, as a psychotherapist, as a youth and community worker, youth, development worker, etc. But the last 15 years, yeah, really focused on. I think the reason why is because take a look at the world. Take a look at the world. We need to move and transition away from cultures of war and cultures of violence towards cultures of peace and justice. And my passion kind of aligns with that, and I have some skills, in that area that hopefully can contribute to this work. So that's a short answer.
You have been, like I was saying, you're a psychotherapist and a counselor and a neuro linguistic programming expert. So you have seen the emotional part of human, I should say,
Mm.
and your work with the prison department also, which intrigued me initially. So, Dr. Phil, do you really feel that world is ready to take the peace side of it? And how do you feel, or what are the challenges or the role of your work? How do you summarize?
Well, there's quite a few. So you spoke there, yeah, in terms of we need to both be good at zooming in to work with humans and people, because at the end of the day, peace building work or social change work is about people. So we need to be good at zooming in. So that's where some of the skills and experience from education, youth work, community, in particular, counseling, psychotherapy, because it's about inter and intrapersonal relationships are really important. But we also need to zoom out as well and have the ability to look at kind of the bigger issues that are at play. The biggest challenge, bar none, facing the world is the war system. We're spending so much money, time, experience, on preparing for war, and I can talk about that if you want me to a little bit more. So one of the challenges is to zoom in and work on the personal, relational work that needs to take place, but also zoom out as well and work on the bigger. So it's this idea of kind of thinking and working both local and global. I think that's one of the things that we need to be good at.
When you were talking about zooming out on bigger challenges, it just came into it involuntarily comes into picture the Palestinian and the issue that's going out, and how war is being I should say war is very sadly so being the economy, or something that is working the economy of certain countries. So I will not go into that detail, but do you feel that with peace and these kind of wars happening, uh, is it very easy for the path of the peace to work there?
There's all peace work should be contextualized. So peace work in, let's say, relatively peaceful countries would look different to what peace work would look like in, let's say, war-torn countries. But there's opportunities and spaces for peace in every single context. What we need to do right now in some contexts is stop people from killing each other, is stop the bombs from dropping. For certain global north countries, stop sending weapons to other countries. We need to stop that work. There's always opportunities to kind of try and make a difference. One of the really important things, and this links to mediation, is that conflict is part of everyday life. We always have conflict. We all will have conflict. War is not a conflict. War is an approach that we take to deal with a conflict. It's obviously dangerous, destructive, and the wrong approach. So when we think of conflict, we can think of dealing with it in constructive ways through non-violence and through peaceful work, or we can choose to deal with it in destructive ways through violence and war. The world, I'm sorry to say this, is leaning towards dealing with conflicts that we have through violence and war, which is completely destructive. And look at the economic cost of war. I mean, there's research that shows by the Institute for Economics and Peace that the economic cost of violence around the world is totaling about 19 trillion so far. And there's different estimates going around, but maybe between 50 and 75% of that overall total can be attributed to war. Now, when you put that in comparison to how much are we spending on peace building expenditure is probably about, I've seen different estimates as well, 0.3 to 0.5%, tiny, 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 tiny amount spent on preparing for peace in comparison to preparing for war. So we've got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of progress made. One of the things that we need to do is to change the narrative and change the notions and the practices of how people think about and do defense and how people think about and do security. So we can defend ourselves, and we 1000% have a right to defend ourselves, as we can see in places like Gaza, Palestine, and Ukraine. 1000% have the right and to defend ourselves. And we can do this without weapons, and we can do it without violence. We have a course right now which is proving hugely popular called Unarmed Civilian Defense Instead of War, which answers the question, but what do we do when militaries attack? Do we not have the right to defend ourselves? And we say 1000% yes, you do. And by the way, there's ways of defending yourselves without violence and without war. And here are some of them. This is what we explore on our course. And hence why we've got massive amount of interest from people around the world that want to know answers to this question. So what we need to do is raise awareness about the power of non-violence and educate widely about the power of non-violence. Because the problem is that when all that we see on the media, all that we see all around us is war, that's all people have as their option. Well, of course, there's loads more options out there, and there's always a choice. War is always the wrong choice.
Yes, and I think what you were saying, it really means that you have to popularize uh, peaceful peace, because
Mm-hmm.
peace is certainly not the first choice of people, as you were saying. It is,
Mm-hmm.
it is, I think, after violence has set in and people are really troubled by violence, that they resort to peace, whereas it should be the other way around. In fact,
Mm.
it is. It should be the only way around and not the other way. So,
Yeah.
but then maybe because the economies are also are working, because peace is not, or peace is not profitable to the world. When we talk about money,
Yeah.
weapons and
Yeah.
their sale are profitable, and that's the reason why. So, in a world where uh, uh, war is business,
Mm-hmm.
how how much peace are we able to sell? If I put it like that,
Mm.
what's your opinion?
Okay, so I'll address that question and touch on some of your other good things that you said. I think we have a challenge to popularize the idea of peace being necessary for sustainable development. Actually, the UN are saying this, and others, there can be no sustainable development without peace. There can be no peace without sustainable development. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons for that is that take a look around the world where there's violence in any countries and any places, which of course is a global challenge, violence, it diverts attention away from productive activities such as, okay, education, climate change, COVID-19 mitigation, among many other things. So in addition to the human costs of war and violence, there's obviously the massive economic costs. So we need to think about that everyone is implicated in the war machine. Everyone, not just where the bombs are being dropped, of course, in different ways, but everyone is implicated in the sense that when the governments decide to spend loads more money on preparing for war and doing war, it means that it diverts money away from attending to the needs and the national interests. More money spent on war or so-called defense means less money spent on education, means less money spent on the productive things. So that's one thing. Um, the second thing about if we think about everybody's vision in the world of a better world, everybody's vision, if you close your eyes now, it has to be a world beyond war. It has to be, peace. It has to be democracy. Well, we've got loads of research now that shows that the power of non-violence is not only much more superior in bringing about change than violence, it also leads to much longer and more sustainable outcomes and democratic societies as well. But the question is, well, okay, Phil, what about the business element? You're right. And this is how war works. War works completely in the opposite to how the world should work. Democracy is about people power and the majority having lots of power, right? Where how war works, it works the opposite way. I don't know if it was me that raised that hand there. It works the opposite way in terms of a few dominating the many. Okay. So although some do profit from, well, actually the large organizations, profit from war. So of course that's a real challenge. What we need to do is show how peace is good. For example, like I just said, if we divert money away from this war machine, we can divert it towards more productive activities. And there's research that shows, that this certain amount that's spent on, I don't know, preparing, training a soldier could in turn be spent on educating and having more teachers in the world, etc. So we need to really address these things.
Yes, that that's really great. But how are you trying to do that? Let's hear from you.
How are we trying to do that? So what we try and do is that we think about, we need to educate people around understanding what the current system is, what we have. Okay, so we do this in a couple of ways. One is through education, educating people around what is the current war system that we have. Okay, it's this. And we do lots of courses, online courses, and in-person trainings, fact sheets, podcasts, webinars, all whole. We have a book, a global security system, which is just behind me now, which lays out the downsides of the current war system that we have. And then we say, okay, well, what do we replace the war system with? How can we have a peace system where peace is pursued by peaceful means? And then we lay out in the book, some strategies for doing that. Well, three of the big strategies are demilitarizing security. So how do we move away from this idea of security and peace through force and peace through violence, organized large-scale violence such as war, towards ideas of, instead of state national security, looking at ideas of human security, common security, authentic security. A second, and there's lots of broad strategies within this. The second one is, how do we manage conflicts without violence instead of what we do now, deal with conflicts through violence? So like I said, there's something really important to understand. War is not a conflict. War is the way in which we choose to deal with a conflict. Of course, there's other ways. So how do we manage conflict without violence? Of course, there's lots of things there. The role of the UN needs reforming, international law, many other things. The role of women in peace and security. And then the third strategy is, how do we educate about cultures of peace instead of cultures of war? How do we amplify the work of peace education, peace journalism, telling different stories around. People think, well, we've always had war. No, we have not. We've had war for tiny amounts of this human species, probably about 10,000 years. There's different estimates, which is a tiny amount of the time in compared to, the time that we've been on the planet. So we need to tell other stories, of peace builders doing excellent work. So there's a lot of things, but there's some of the things. Education, action, and mass media and communication is a big one, because as we see on the TV, there's a lot of kind of war propaganda. And what we need is there's this idea of vicious circles and virtuous circles. Vicious circles is kind of violence begets violence, and it's, if all you see on the news is war, then all you think is war. We have this in psychology, this idea of the availability bias. So if you look on the TV and you see this country's fighting, that's all you'll think that's happening around the world. Of course, ideas of, oh, in England today there was peace, that doesn't sell, right? So it doesn't go on the news. But the opposite is true. Virtuous cycles, which means peace begets peace. The more peaceful we are, the more we can be in peace with ourselves, be in peace with others, the more we can translate it into peace systems, the better it will become. So we need to get better at kind of this virtual positive cycles of peace.
That's really a good idea. Um, anything for the younger generation that you feel, people who are joining the profession, who are joining peace building or conflict study, anything that you would like to them to focus on? Anything?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of lots of things. One is they can build their capacity and upskill, so they can either learn about what is peace building. Maybe that's me peeping, is it? I'm gonna turn it off if it is. They can learn about peace building, how it's been effective. They can join different networks to get involved with peace building work. They can take action, and then learn through doing. We have a big program here, Peace Education Action for Impact, which has trained youth from 19 different countries in the last 3 years. So it's a large project in some of the most agile and vulnerable contexts. So everywhere from Ukraine, Russia, Iraq, Haiti, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Venezuela, Colombia, Cameroon, but Bosnia, Serbia. So some really, really interesting kind of context. So this is a
And
very popular program that we
and
have.
after these students join, I mean, do they become community peace ambassadors somewhere, making a
Mm.
difference in their communities?
Yeah, well, actually, within this program that we're talking about, we have two parts to it. One is an education part, and then another one is an action part. So hence the name Peace, Education, and Action for Impact. So after they learn about peace building and war prevention and things like this, they then go and do projects in the community. So yes, so they make an impact through the projects that they do. But what's really interesting is that some people that have been through the program, after they've been through the program, some of them decide to change their career path and think, oh my gosh, 'cause I can think of now some of the great students, someone from Venezuela comes to mind, others from Ukraine, that have decided this is what I want to do. I wanted to do this before, but now I'm going to decide to focus my career on this. And I wrote recommendations letters for people that have been applying for undergraduates and master's programs in peace and conflict studies. So that's one of the other brilliant benefits of the program.
This is really great, and I should say that you're doing a great job because you're venturing into where it is required, and then you are challenging the mindset that yes, war is not required. Let's go and if war can be built or war can be made, then peace can also be built and made, and that path can also be explored. So that was
Mhm.
really great. Any closing comments that you feel like before we wind up?
No, thank you so much for the conversation. And of course, if there's any, if anybody wants to follow up, I don't know if you'll share the details, but yeah, World Beyond War. Please check us out on our website. We'd love to hear. And we're a global grassroots movement, so we work with people all around the world. So we'd love to hear from you and work with you if we're not doing already. So thank you so much for the invitation. Lovely to chat with you.
That's really great, and it's a pleasure to have had and talk to you. And I'm sure this is going to make a huge impact on the people who are going to be listening to this conversation. It's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This talk.
Thank you.